Good turnout. Okay, thanks everybody for coming. We have whole panel to talk today about all of our emergency hurricane information. I'm going to set this start. You guys introduce yourselves to come down. So Brad down there. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Brad Dykins. I'm the Public Education Officer, Public Affairs Officer with City of Seminole Fire Rescue, and I'm in charge of helping you with your hurricane preparedness issues out here in this community.
Good evening, my name is Iñaki Rizzola, and I'm with Pinellas County Emergency Management.
I'm Terry Hughes, I'm Chief of Police in Indian Shores Police Department.
Steve Andrews, building official for the town.
Heather Burford, I serve as the fire chief of the City of Seminole Fire Rescue Department, who provides fire protection services along with your beach team community.
Lisa Foster, I'm a resident, and I'm on a program for public information for the town.
And meteorologist Brian McClure, evening meteorologist, but today did day shift so I could come see you guys.
Okay, well, thank you for coming. And I guess you can start.
Okay, sure. Well, behind me there should be a PowerPoint popping up. Victor's going to give us a hand with it. But basically, we want to go over some of the details to help you be prepared and be ready for the oncoming season, which starts June 1st and runs up until November 30th. Every year it's the same thing. It's the same drill. Get ready, get ready, get ready. And we don't have one. And some people go, yay, and some people go, oh. Depending on what viewpoint you have. It's a little strange. It's surreal, actually, but it's important for us to take it very seriously and prepare ourselves for what may come down in the community. We can panic that it's hurricane season or not panic. Basically, we want to prepare. And that means making a personal plan, having an idea of what you want to do yourself. Inform your friends, inform your neighbors, inform your family members that don't live around here, and have them aware of what you're going to be doing, because one of the things out here in Redington Shores is it's very low. And it's all about the tidal surge. And that's what Inaki's going to be talking to us with some of the slosh models and things of this nature, and Ryan will be addressing that as well. We get ready for more than just hurricanes. I mean, some of the things we do to prepare ourselves, we can apply easily to tornadoes, severe thunderstorms, flooding, hazmat, hazardous materials incidents, power and water outages, civil unrest, and terrorism. We don't have too much of that out here, thankfully, but we want to be prepared for all the elements that can be a problem that's going to disrupt our lifestyle, the way we're used to it, and be prepared to handle those emergencies. Excuse me. We want to make decisions now of what we're going to do, so we don't have stress later. Okay, we have stress later because, oh my gosh, I forgot what we're going to do. Make plans for our pets, our family members, our other loved ones are around, our friends that can't help for themselves. Step up to the plate and give them a hand. We're all in this together type of thing. And we want to make sure everybody knows the plan, like I said, your family that's here and then the family away. So everybody has an idea that you're accounted for and you're safe, and it's very important we do that. And then the other important element is practice the plan. Okay, what are we going to do? All right, here's my materials in the closet. We're going to put it together in a bag. Where's the shelter we're going to go? We're going to check off and understand the route to it that's easy, and have a couple different routes to it in case there's a problem where we can't get through. We want to have a survival kit. Okay, in that survival kit, we're going to need water. And usually it's 1 gallon of water per person per day. It's a lot of water. Okay. We want food. We're saying now 3 to 7 days worth of food, not just 3 days. It's going to take 3 days just for people to get saddled up and get here to us. And the stores are closed and we can't get food stocks. It might be challenging for us to have simple food things. So we want to have non-perishable items in our pantries, in our kits, and ready to go. Things that are nutritious, things that give us energy, and things that won't spoil. Okay. We want to make sure we have medications, 2 weeks of medications if you take prescription medications, because pharmacies will be closed. We want to have our important papers secured. And a lot of people today are using thumb drives. put your papers on something like this and have a lanyard, and you can wear it and bring it with you where you need to go. And it'll be very helpful for you so you can plug that into another computer and have your documents at hand. You want to back up your computer, have, as we said with that hard drive, have a flashlight and extra batteries available, a radio with extra batteries, earbuds that go in that radio. Sometimes people don't like what you're listening to. And if you have to go to a shelter, all that superfluous noise gets to be a little confusing in shelters. You want to also consider other family members and such. Okay, maybe youngsters that need diapers, and so we want to have extra diapers. We want to have our needs met for elderly senior citizens that may need a little extra care. So maybe some senior sanitary items as well. We want quiet games for kids and books and things like that. All this stuff goes into a kit. Who can design that kit? It's you, because you know what you need. We can suggest things, but you know what really goes in those kits for you. Make sure you put cash or have cash available to you, because ATMs will not work. And a cell phone and 12-volt chargers are real handy to have, or nowadays solar chargers work great too. Okay. Don't spend a lot of money. Don't have to do that. You have probably a lot of this stuff in your house already. Utilize that. Okay. We evacuate because we run from the wind, run from the water, and we hide from the wind. Okay. So basically, out here we're doing a lot of running. Because we're pretty much equal to sea level, and with the surges that come in, we'll have to get out of the way. But if you know somebody on the high ground, Rocky's going to talk about this a little bit more in regards to having a host home to go to. Maybe you have a friend or relative that lives in a higher area. That's a place to go. I recommend that over a shelter for sure. As you can see, Pinellas County changes drastically. Okay. In the first picture, basically, it's showing us with a level A evacuation, with what usually happens when we have a simplistic storm move through here. The coastal areas get inundated with water. As we progress through the surges, and Anaki's going to speak more about surge, but we turn into two islands. Holy smokes. You got a boat in your backyard? You might need it. So we want to be prepared. And all these are different evacuation levels here. Those levels, the zones are changing. They will be changing, but we do have levels for what we're expecting for water. Okay. Is your home substantially built? If it is, stay there, but not here on the beach. It's going to be inland, so I'm recommending you go to a host home for that. Okay. And again, know your evacuation level. How do you find that information out? Well, Anaki will speak more to this, but basically, you can go on the websites of the county, or even your trim notice will have that. If you stay, make sure, and if these are for people you're going to be staying with, make sure their home is secure and tight. Have good windows, a good roof. Does anybody know which the best roof is? The hip roof, right? Hey, that's good. You read ahead a chapter or two. Sorry. The hip roof, it slants on the sides, the wind goes right over it. Okay? But a gable roof, like the Peak Day, the wind catches it and it peels right away. So these types of roofs, you got to look at that and how your house is designed. Get your yard in shape. That means pick up the yard furniture, pick up all the debris around your yard. I'm not saying that you have debris, but I mean, there's stuff in our yards. I've got stuff in my yards. And like George Carlin said, we all have stuff. Yeah. And, you know, that stuff blows around and it becomes your neighbor's property after a while, and we don't want it in your living room window. If you rent, check with your landlord, see what the processes are for your property that you rent from, and see how they're taking care of things for you. And look at that host home thing. Maybe start making a telephone tree or calling around and finding out where we can go. You don't have to go to a shelter. In fact, we probably don't recommend a shelter. Did I say that? It's true, because shelters are going to be crowded and maxed out. So host home projects work really, really well. If you have to leave, find out today where you're going to go. No, even this evening. Take a hurricane guide with you, a all hazards guide with you from this evening's presentation. These are out front. Okay, and you can look on there, it's going to tell you exactly what shelters are available, where you can go, and where the high ground is. Bring your survival kit with you. Keep your car ready and have it fueled up, because gas stations will not be able to dispense fuel as readily as we are used to every day. Other things to consider are special needs evacuations. Those of us that aren't as apt to get around, we need to be registering these people. And Rocky's going to be talking more about how we register these individuals. Okay, police chief's going to be speaking to us in regards to the access permits and how we do that. It's how we can get back out here after the storm goes. That's a real important element. And it's all done so we can have good accountability on the residents coming back into the region. And these are all the different communities that the hang tag program affects. This community is number one on the list for our needs because we're looking out for your well-being. You want to do more? You can join a CERT team. We have a community CERT team, a community emergency response team that serves your community. We have members from your community that actually are part of this program, and we sponsor it out of Seminole, but it serves this whole region. And they help people like yourselves get coordinated and assist them with evacuation needs, with running our emergency operations center, with even just getting educational materials out to the community. So certain members do a lot for our community, and they help us on rainy days and sunny days. So they help us with special events in the community as well. So it's a lot of fun. They're even having a picnic this weekend, so they get together and socialize quite a bit. For information, you can always contact us at Seminole at www.myseminole.com. You can contact me directly at my phone line. Line is 393-8711, extension 210. And I'm glad to help you out with any of your needs and specifically answer your questions. Okay. And then you can go to the county's website, emergency management information, which will help get you Anaki here as well. And then FEMA and the Red Cross agencies also have a lot of great information. So we're going to hold the questions, we're going to move on down the line. I'm going to present Anaki here from Pinellas County. And he's going to introduce himself and start talking to you about some of the county applications here. Thank you.
Now, borrow your clicker.
Okay, Victor.
You kept calling me Rocky, I was going to go, Adrian.
Sorry.
That's all right, again, my name is Iñaki Ujol. I'm with Pinellas County Emergency Management. It's my pleasure to be here with you. I think this is my third or fourth year doing this. And as much as I love you, I really just come for the pizza. So, but it is my pleasure. I know that I'm going to leave the weather forecasting to Ryan later. But one of the questions we always get asked is, how many storms are forecast this year? And I always just keep saying, I don't care. This is my hometown, Miami-Dade. Those are not mobile homes, those are actually concrete-built homes. And it just took one storm, Andrew, on a very slow year. So whether it's El Nino or La Nina or whatever you want to call it, be prepared. It only takes one. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a hurricane either. It could be a heavy rain event. Last year we had Hermine, which in some parts of this community dropped close to 20 inches of rain. So flooding certainly is an issue. So I know Brad talked about it. We're just going to highlight some of the key points of what you need to do and what you need to be prepared. Real quick question. Does anyone here not know what evacuation zone they live in currently? Does anyone not too sure what evacuation zone? Okay, all right. Well, if you all happen to live on this side, if you happen to live in the Barrier Islands, then it's an A. I don't need the app to tell you, but we'll talk about the app. But know what your zone is, know what your hurricane risk, your flood risk. Do those other steps that Brad talked about earlier about building a kit, knowing where to go, keeping in touch. Those are so critical. Being informed, making a plan. We are definitely going to be dealing with new storm surge and evacuation zone maps this year. Towards the tail end of last year, we received new information, pretty much most of Florida, from the National Hurricane Center about modeling. And as I was preparing today, fellow staff person passed this along from many years ago. It says Pinellas County Disaster Planning, and he's on the phone talking about where people should go. If they're letter A through J, they go north on 19. If they're whatever through T, they go to Disney World. Everyone else goes to the local bar. At least they're having a plan. And so the importance is that while we may be dealing with new storm surge maps and new evacuation zones, the basic message that Brad talked about earlier is we're still going to be potentially 2 islands in a really bad event. That hasn't changed, okay? And for this community here in Reddington Shores, you're still in A. You didn't really go to any other category. You're still in A. The only news for you is maybe you'll have a little bit more water. But really, what's the difference between 8 feet at worst to 11 feet at worst? Because, I'm 5'8". It's already over my head at that point. And it's over the head of most people. So the risk is still there. It's just equally greater. There are other impacts to other parts of the county that I'll talk about a little bit. But the key message, if I can tell you today, is when you evacuate, if you're told to evacuate tens of miles if you can, not hundreds of miles. Because evacuating all the way to Disney World could be where the storm may end up going like Charlie did when it made that right-hand turn. So if you can, evacuate closer. So let me talk a little bit about some of the impact that the new storm surge modeling is having for our community. And I'm talking about it in generalities because some of this is coming out as of June 1st. A lot of this will be, there's going to be a media day where we're going to actually have a lot of this information available. But we've had hurricane shelter sites that are now impacted by the new potential storm surge modeling. 2 of our special needs shelters, which also serve pet-friendly shelters, are among those that are potentially impacted in the worst-case event. For level E, the worst case of the worst-case storm, we're going to have to go back to using 10 square feet per person for calculating space in this county. And so last year, I don't know how many of you were here last year when I made everyone kind of get up and move around and do a little exercise. I was thinking, what's the best way I can describe what 10 foot of square space is? And I figured it out because I kind of measured myself. I was sitting down. I'm like, it's really where you're sitting. Just if you stretch your legs a little bit forward, that's 10 square feet. That's it. There's not even room for an air mattress. And that's the reality in the worst case. And even if it's not the worst case, we still have only 15 square feet per space for a shelter. So I have no problem with Brad saying, shelters are there for you, but really plan to go somewhere else if you can. And we want to make sure there are places for people to go to, and therefore we have the shelters. But the best place may be at a friend's house or somebody that you know. So those are things. Some hospitals have been impacted. In fact, it came in the paper that All Children's Hospital is actually looking at them being one of the sites, and we have some nursing homes and adult living facilities have also been impacted. And we've started to meet with the hospitals. We'll be meeting with nursing homes. Eventually, we're going to be running the reports on fire stations and police stations and all of that. So the important thing is know your zone, which in this community pretty much is an A. But again, where you may go or where you may have been going in the past may have changed. Maybe it was in a non-evacuation zone in the past, and it could be now located in an evacuation zone. So the same facts, the same points that Brad talked about, where to get that information on our website. By calling that phone number, you can call, enter your address, by utility bill. By June 1st, the goal is that the new storm surge modeling will have all that information on the website. So if you call today, it's still using last year's data. So the whole goal is to roll it out by June 1st. So very important. And if anything, if I can point out to that nice little map of Pinellas, I've seen some draft versions of what the new map will look like. It's a lot redder. So the impact for you all is that you may now, you're evacuating because you're in a level A, but so could be other communities that are now, maybe weren't in a level A before, now they're evacuating, and that's additional people on the road. So keep that in mind as you think about it. So we have these ways to find out about it. We have some great technology of Know Your Zone on our website where you can plug in and look at representations of where your community is at and see what your surge zone is and what potentially could be the closest shelters to you. And a point about shelters is, yes, we do have a listing of all the shelters that we have, but they may not always open for every storm. Because, you know, we may open some for certain storms, and for others we say they're not appropriate for that kind of storm. So it's important to be listening to your local TV, radio, and other information sources on that. So Know Your Zone. Another really neat app, especially if you're going somewhere or if you want to see how much water potentially your house here in Reddington Shores may have, is the Storm Surge Protector app, which will actually give you a visual representation of how much water, how much feet could potentially be impacting a community. Again, those two, both Know Your Zone and the Storm Surge app, Protector app, will be updated with the new information. The goal is to have it all by June 1st to update that. So if you have to evacuate today, kind of like what Brad said, figure out where you need to go. Can you stay with friends? Can you go to a host home? My advice is that if you belong to a church, a synagogue, a temple, a civics club, a social club, have conversations with them about what other fraternal organizations or what other church organizations are out somewhere else that you may want to be able to maybe start building those bridges and relationships. So, you know, if you belong to the Church of What's Happening Now in Reddington Shores, try to see if there's the Church of What's Happening Now that's over in Largo. And there's folks there that live there. Would they be willing, would residents there be willing to take you in? That's the Host Home program, and we have a lot of information on that on our website. It's a volunteer program that people basically open up their homes to others. Obviously, bring your supplies with you if the time comes. Other key things to consider: special needs. If you have special medical needs, if you have any needs for assistance, we ask you to contact emergency management. You have to contact your local fire department. There is an online, there's an application that you can download, a PDF online. We're actually looking to update that this year to have we're asking better questions, working with Department of Health, so that we can have better information about how to best serve you. If you have challenge, if you're transportation challenged, hopefully maybe your neighbors will help you out, but know that we're going to also have PSTA running routes, and they'll be running what they call their high peak routes 24 hours a day during the evacuation period, and it'll be free. So if anyone can get to a PSTA bus, they'll get folks out of those areas and take them to the closest shelter. And folks need that additional level of assistance that maybe they can't get to the closest bus stop. Again, let us know through the Special Needs Transportation Application Program. We actually assign buses to the city of Seminole to help pick up people with special needs, as well as those that maybe have significant transportation challenges that may be able to go to a general shelter, but need that extra help to get there. When you're told to evacuate, when you see the chief on TV and you see the rest of us telling us to evacuate, get out. Certainly take those preparations that you need to during the watch, but leave when doing so. Don't forget about your pets. They're like family members, right? So don't leave them at home, but don't stay home because of them either. So have a plan for them as well. They need their own disaster kit. They need their own supplies. Again, check with wherever you're going if they'll take pets. We do have a couple of pet-friendly shelters. For those of you that own businesses, certainly the same preparation is the same in the sense of the business needs to have a disaster plan. The chief's going to talk about reentry a little bit later, and applies to them in terms of when businesses can come back into the community. Stay in the know. Weather alert radios, local media, community notification, our Citizens Information Center will all be fired up. To give Brian a plug, I have my Bay News 9 app on my phone. It's one of the reliable ones that I certainly use to know what the latest weather is going on. I like the little radar that pops up and tells me where the storms are. Social media is out there. There's lots of ways. I'm going to give you 2 other ways to also find out. We'll call you. It's called Alert Pinellas, and it's a free service. It's an emergency notification system that emergency management manages. You can sign online. and you basically get text messages, you can get phone messages, and we will be issuing emergency notifications that way. So that's something that, it's not just for hurricanes, it could happen for any other kind of emergency in the community that it can be used, but Alert Pinellas is an option. There's some cards on the table over there, and I know Brad has some cards as well on how you can sign up for Alert Pinellas. One final app is Pinellas County has a free mobile app, and it's sort of doing things for you, and it's basically your ability to pay when there's a pothole or there's something that's a county issue. You could be notifying us. We're looking at ways on how we can turn that into for use for disaster applications. So how we can better serve you. So the technology's out there. So whether it's through social media, through apps, whether it's through phones, notifications to you, whether it's through TV, there's certainly ways to be informed. One final thing, slightly off topic, but not off topic totally. I was asked for another community this week that I'm doing a presentation to talk a little bit about Penny for Pinellas. So I'll talk about the impact of that on emergency services and what that's done. So for those that don't know, Penny for Pinellas is a sales tax, and it's been in effect since 1990. It's been renewed at least on several occasions. It's a tax. A third of it's usually paid by tourists. It'll be up for a vote. How it's used is for infrastructure and from bridges and waterways and neighborhood parks. Those have been used. The new emergency operations center that I've been very lucky to work out of, and our community has gone to, was built with Penny for Pinellas monies. I believe your facility in Indian Shores Municipal Building also received some money for Penny from Pinellas. Some beach nourishment renovations have all gone for Penny for Pinellas. So there's lots of projects that have benefit. Like I said, it's infrastructure tax in terms of building towards helping to support infrastructure and projects. In terms of what it will do in the future, again, the same focus what the Board of County Commissioners is looking to do is look at issues as flood, sewer prevention, additional emergency shelter space issues, upgrading our emergency communications network. And sort of earlier today, or earlier in the presentation, I mentioned to you that the new storm surge modeling looks like in our worst case scenario, in our level E event, we would be potentially losing 2 of our special needs shelters and 2 of our pet-friendly shelters, which is a very big blow for our community if we lose that. Well, it turns out that 2.5 years ago, Sally Bishop, our director, one of the projects that she did with the school district was that actually put generators and wells, emergency wells, in several of our schools. Largo High School that just finished getting built, and Palm Harbor High, as well as Eastlake. And it was through the Penny for Pinellas money that she was able to do that. Well, it turns out that those are the facilities that we're now looking to see if we can use them as our alternate special needs shelters and our pet-friendly shelters. So an investment that certainly has paid itself off. So in closing, please take heed, prepare, get informed. If you're evacuating, know where you're going to, and take action when the time comes. Thank you very much. Chief?
Thank you. Before I get started, in 1962, President John F. Kennedy declared May 15th as National Police Memorial Day. That is today. That's the reason you see the band on my badge, to pay homage to the officers that were killed in the line of duty protecting their citizens and their community. I'd like everybody to please bow your heads in a moment of silence for all the fallen officers. Thank you. Now to get started, I agree with everything my distinguished colleagues have said before. You need an action plan, and you need it now. You need to get it done. Go to relatives, friends, hotels, away from the area. Consider it as a relative you haven't seen in a while. So you go to visit. You know, it's just that simple. I'll show you a presentation, a little bag I have. It's called a Go Bag. You can purchase it online through eBay, and you get the information from floridadisaster.org. This will help you build your plan. And in this bag, there's even a little pack of playing cards, because you know there's going to be no power, so you're going to need something to do. But anyway, use the shelter as a last resort. It's going to be noisy. There's going to be no privacy. Some places don't take pets, so make sure you make arrangements for your pets. If a friend you will stay with has 2 cats and you have 2 dogs, you may think about maybe visiting another relative. But you need to have that plan enacted now. And also at the shelters, it has to do with personal hygiene. Maybe this guy next to you, it's only 10 feet away, just spent all day working on his house, getting it prepared. Well, there's not a whole lot of shower in some of these shelters, so be prepared to put up the worst of the worst. And I agree with my colleagues, get your medication in order, your personal hygiene products. Fill your car up with gas. You're not going to be able to use ATM. There's going to be no power. Your food, your water, especially for your pets, portable radio. And I'm going to show you this Go Bag. Like I said, you can get it for my emergency manager director, bought all of this for our FLOP team. That's our financial, logistics, operation, and planning. People in our organization at the EOC, everyone has an individual job. Every one of them got one of these. It's all waterproof. It's got water, food, toiletries, the deck of cards I was telling you about. And it's got an emergency repair kit. It's got emergency kit. It's got a flashlight. It's got a portable radio. Everything you need in a dire emergency if you have to go to a shelter. Again, make a shelter as your last resort. Because and now I want to speak on the part of not evacuating. Folks, don't gamble with your lives. If the evacuation order is given, please leave. I mean, I love you folks, but there's an evacuation. Get out of here. Leave. Don't gamble your life on whether the storm surge is going to be 3 feet or 15 feet. We're all experts. We've all been in this field for a long time. We may know just a little bit more than what you do, than what you know. We may get information that hasn't really gotten out to you yet, and maybe you don't hear that information. But once the evacuation is given, please leave. And one of the reasons, once the winds hit 45 to 50 miles an hour, we will not respond. If you make a decision to stay on the island and you fall, you have a medical emergency, your roof is just blown off. There's even been, has everybody heard about the snake bites all over Florida here lately? Well, snakes right now are coming out because it's the drought. They're trying to find water. If we get inundated with a storm surge, a lot of rain, they're going to come out of their holes because they don't want to drown. Guess where they're going to? Higher ground. If you're staying here and the water comes up to your first level, guess where the snakes are going to go? It's just food for thought. I'm trying to scare you into leaving. Like I said, if you decide to stay, you're on your own. They say make sure you have enough food and water if you do decide to stay for 7 to 10 days. I'm thinking more like 14. We are on the Barrier Island. We are as far west as you can get. All that roadways, everything, power and everything's going to be restored east of us first. We're the last ones they're going to get to. So it may take quite a while for them to get here, even to help us. Then again, leave if the evacuation order is given. Then a reentry. One of the first organizations that can say that where you can come back or not is the power company. If the power company gives it okay for you to come back, then that's the first step. But to get back on the island, you need one of these permits. Who doesn't have a permit? Okay, see, where's Mary at? I don't see Mary. See any of the girls up front, Mary or Tracy. If you're a resident, you show proof of where you live, and you'll get this card to get back in. This is administered by the sheriff's office. It was quite a few $1 million, but the sheriff graciously offered to administer this program. We're issued the tags here in each town, but he's the one that administers them and lets us know who gets back on the island or not. Same thing with businesses. If you want to go back on the island, you have to have this tag. But they're not going to let you in until it's safe. You're going to have no power, no water, no sewage. Your building may be in such a disrepair or damage that you can't even get back into your building. But believe me, folks, as soon as you can get back, we'll get you back. But you've got to have one of these tags. There's Mary. Come on in, Mary. Come in a minute. This is Mary Palmer. She's the town clerk. She was one of the ones you would get this permit from. It's free of cost, doesn't cost anything, and just see Mary, she can issue one of these tags. How many, 2 or 3 per household? 2. 2 per household. But there are extenuating circumstances, depends on if we believe you or not. In Indian Shores, everybody remembers Congressman Jolly, David Jolly. Well, him and his wife, they lived in Indian Shores, so that was 2 tags. But a lot of times he's in Washington, D.C., but he has his chief of staff that stays here that takes care of his place. So I couldn't issue him a 3rd one. I thought really hard, and I finally went to the sheriff and their administration. I finally got approval to get a 3rd one for his chief of staff so he can take care of his place. So if you do have extenuating circumstances, let us know. Maybe we can get you 3 or maybe even 4. But like I said, you're not getting back on the island without this and your ID. Recently, we had the Hermine go through. And just to give you an idea, it wasn't actually a hurricane for our area. But Mayor Pat Serrano, the mayor of Indian Shores, he had taken his wife to the hospital to have emergency surgery. While they were there, their house caught fire from a lightning strike. 60-mile-an-hour winds. They put over 1 million gallons of water to put that fire out. As soon as they put one out from the wind, it started up over here. They start putting that out, this go back up again. They battled that thing for hours. Gulf Boulevard and Park Boulevard, westbound, and north and south on Gulf were closed for hours trying to get that under control. And that was just from actually a tropical storm in our area. From a tropical storm, wasn't even a hurricane yet. So it's another thing to think about. If you decide to stay, a lightning strike, your house is on fire, we're not coming. We're not coming, you're on your own. And on that note, I'll pass it to our building official.
Let me borrow the chief's microphone here since I think the mayor's microphone is broken down. But I had a few things to talk about. Mainly the building department, you know, we try to make sure your house is going to survive for when you get back. But the main key on everything here is evacuating. The more prepared that everybody is to evacuate, the less the town has to help with that, and therefore lets the town get its stuff together because we're in the same zone. We evacuate too if we get the word. We evacuate to Seminole and some other places that help us out there, and that's all part of the planning that we've been doing and that the town supports all the time. We're part of the local mitigation strategy, a multi-jurisdictional, multi-hazard plan that basically put us all right here in front of you right now. And provided the planning that all of our emergency services and then what the building codes and zoning codes and FEMA codes, and it all ties together, and it's all to help preserve life and property. The CRS, which is the flood insurance, is part of that, all those different plans, and it basically created a program for public outreach, which I think Lisa's going to talk a little bit more about. That's part of our floodplain management process, and it also we update it annually, and we're gonna be putting that before the commission pretty soon, the update for that and the adoption of the latest update of the local mitigation strategy. But going back to the town emergency management plans, we're together with Indian Shores and Seminole, and hopefully preparing to come back and take care of what we got to take care of after it's over. That's where the building department comes in after that clearance. After the streets are kind of cleared and they've done a windshield damage assessment, we do the detailed damage assessments. The utilities might be getting reestablished by that time. Everything that, needs to be done to make it safe for people to come back and check their property is what's going to be in process there. And, by helping yourselves, by preparing properties and preparing to evacuate, you just make it better for the town. The less loose debris and stuff that's been left out in the yard to float or fly, that's one of the things that the building department's going to do before a storm is run around and hopefully not chase homeowners, but contractors who may not know, and get them to take boards off of scaffoldings and things off of roofs and things like that. But all the support for the continuing education, the comprehensive planning, and even the environmental restrictions and parks and restorations are all tie in with this emergency management and the flooding, because the less pollutants in the water, the less stuff that's going to float into houses, the easier the cleanup, and the safer it is for everybody to come back sooner. And I'll pass it on then.
So tonight you've heard a lot about what you should do as individuals. I'm going to talk a little bit about what your local fire departments are doing. And I do want to remind everybody that it's Madera Beach and the City of Seminole Fire Rescue Department that both have the privilege of serving your community, along with North Reddington Beach and Reddington Beach. We're actually in a fire service protection agreement that's been in place for many, many years. So equally, we share that responsibility. And that's not just responding to fire calls, it's also all of your emergency medical calls, and then things such as fire inspections and plan reviews, code enforcement, and of course, fire investigations. The chief pointed out an incident that I was at, that mayor's fire back during her meeting, and it was a nightmare. It really was. It was something that I had never seen before in terms of fighting fire during an active storm, and it was very challenging for us. But some of the things that we're doing, the department-wide, this is the type of time of year that we do completely review our emergency operations plan. Each community has an emergency operations plan that involves all their organizations and agencies, and we go through that EOP very carefully each year to make sure that it's still pertinent and we're including additional information that needs to be put in there. We're also coordinating quite a bit with the county agencies as well, from a training point of view, from an exercising point of view, and plan review as well. We work with a system called WebEOC to communicate back and forth needs and updates as to what's occurring during an incident. And we've had a number of WebEOC training situations this past year, and have a number of people trained now in Seminole to use the system as well. It's going to be the way we get resources into the community and down into the beaches on an as-need basis. We're also working to update ourselves and remind ourselves about our initial damage assessment software. Every piece of fire apparatus, and I believe every police officer as well, has access to what's called first impression. And what it is once the storm goes through, fire apparatus and police cars are able to get out into the neighborhoods and get an initial damage assessment. And that gives the counties some indication of where the worst areas have been hit, where the damage has been sustained the worst, and where the resources are going to be needed. And that's pretty important every year that we get in there and we review that. We also carefully review all of our communications capability. We hope that cell towers will remain up, and we hope that our radio communication systems work, very sophisticated systems that rely on towers, but we work that all the way down to satellite phones and ham radio operators as well. So we test that annually and make sure that those capabilities are still there. as a fire department and all of our city employees are being reminded of their own personal emergency plans. Brad each year goes out to all of our personnel in the city, and we go over making sure that crews can be available in the stations to help you folks, and their families are taken care of wherever they are. A lot of our folks actually have families in Pasco and other counties, Hillsborough County, and so making sure that your own family is taken care of as an employee so that they can be here to help you is pretty key to us. Our Emergency Operations Center, which is a sophisticated Cat 5 building that fortunately the mayor and a handful of staff members here from Redington Shores had a chance to visit the other day. We go through it, we make sure that it's ready and can be pretty much activated pretty quickly. We have CERT staff, as Brad mentioned, and we're a small community as well, and we rely on our volunteer assistance, and we have CERT team members that come in and provide that emergency operations support capacity, which is so important. We review our activation levels and how we go about that and how we go about communicating with one another. And again, our internal communications. Social media is also a very important component to how we communicate amongst one another, and then also out to the community and how we receive information in as well. Some other initiatives that are going on. Right now we are in conversation with the town of Redington Shores to put an agreement in place whereby your elected officials, your administration staff will be able to utilize our Emergency Operations Center. Should an event occur, we can actually house a couple of staff members in our EOC, again, a self-contained Cat 5 building during an incident where you'll be able to communicate with your police department across at their EOC and then back into this area as well. So that's an important, I think, new initiative that we're going through. We're also going to be able to offer backup space once the day-to-day activities start after the storm, and some potential storage, outdoor storage for some of your equipment, your vehicles and whatnot that need to be on higher ground. Brad mentioned the Redington Shores CERT participation, always looking for members there because I think that within the communities, those team members are important for damage assessment, for getting back into their neighborhoods. That's a key to what we're doing. One of the other initiatives that we're pretty proud of is we're trying to launch a drone initial damage assessment program, which a lot of times what ends up happening with fire apparatus and police vehicles is that we don't get far down the road before we have flattened tires, just with debris and materials in the road that can cause flat tires, or just a tree being down and wires being down. We can't always get very far out of our fire stations. So the use of unmanned aircraft, such as drones, can start a program that will actually allow us to get better damage assessment from that third parallel, if you will. We've got a number of CERT team members and Brad who's heading that up. And we're hoping to have that up and running very soon from a day-to-day operations point of view, but then certainly in a storm situation as well. You've already heard a lot about the special needs database. We're actively now going through our annual update for our special needs database, and a lot of public education going on. Again, everything from this hurricane symposium, we have one coming up on Saturday as well in Seminole, a lot of social media blasts and newsletter articles. We understand that communications is so important, and we are ready from sort of the highest level of communication all the way down to noticing things on whiteboards and on just paper hung on doors sort of thing. We know that people are going to want information. They're going to want to know the status. It's better to tell somebody that their power may not be on for 10 to 14 days as opposed to just saying we don't know when. So the information that we get, we're going to try to push out to you as quickly as possible. And I think the chief mentioned one of the most important things is just a reminder that if you elect to stay, or if you're in a situation where the storm is at its worst and you're in a place where you're going to need us, we also have restrictions on when we can and when we cannot respond for our safety and everyone else's safety as well. So during the height of those storms at certain mile-an-hour ratings, we will not be able to respond to your incidents. And it may be some time even afterwards, again, getting roads cleared and working with our Public Works Department to get into the area. So keep that in mind. It's very important for everybody to understand that. But we're doing our best to prepare for the worst, and we're always here to answer any of the questions that you have or the concerns that you might have. So always use us as a resource. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. I'm the chair of the program for public information that the town has, which is tied into the community rating system, which Steve alluded to. And we kicked off this committee a couple of years ago in order to better communicate to you the information that you need about your flood risk, your flood hazard, what you can do, hurricane preparedness, what to do after the storm, all these things that everybody here tonight is talking about. And the program for public information is just one small piece of the big floodplain management program that the town does have. And you see it? Okay, perfect. So what brought, and you can't read that apparently. So anyhow, FEMA implements the National Flood Insurance Program, and the National Flood Insurance Program basically makes flood insurance available to a community for adopting a floodplain ordinance, which is what Steve was also talking about, having building regulations to make sure that your structure is safe and it's above that flood level and all those things. Above the flood level, let me clarify, we're not talking storm surge here. There are two separate sets of maps. We have our flood insurance rate maps, which are more of a rainfall-based model that are used to delineate floodplains. The storm surge maps are talking about these hurricanes and tropical events that are going to create a lot of surge that's going to come onto the land. So you all know that when it rains really hard and there may not be anything tropical happening, the roads can go underwater. Because we have low-lying areas, if it's high tide, the water can't get out of the pipes and things back up. So those are the maps that we're talking about when we're talking about these FEMA firms, flood insurance rate maps. So this National Flood Insurance Program offers flood insurance and requires flood insurance if you have a federally backed mortgage if you are in one of the high hazard areas. First of all, raise your hand if you're in a flood zone. Everybody in here should just raise their hand. I don't care where you live. If you live in Florida, you should have just raised your hand. Everybody is in a flood zone. We have low risk, moderate risk, and high risk. And if you're on the island, you are in a high risk. You are at risk for storm surge. You are also at risk for your just sunny day flooding, literally sunny day flooding. You know how it is in Florida. So the National Flood Insurance provides you the opportunity to purchase flood insurance and requires you to buy it if you have a federally backed mortgage. The town does so much more than what the National Flood Insurance Program requires them to do, that they also participate in the community rating system. National Flood Insurance Program implements the community rating system, so the more above and beyond the town does, the more points they accrue, and the bigger flood insurance discount you guys get. So the town has been doing a lot with their floodplain planning for the past 2 years to bring it up to speed. The manual, basically the way they score you, has changed. So the town is working really hard to make sure they're up to speed, and they're doing more and more and more so that you can have an insurance discount. You can't read that either, probably. We need to get a bigger projector. So there are different classes in the CRS program. They go from class 10 being the worst down to 1 being the best. It's 5% discount per class. So right now the town is a class 7, which is getting you a 15% discount on your flood insurance policies. And we're working to at least maintain that, if not improve that, when we have an audit this coming fall. And the program for public information, which I am going to get to, I promise, is part of how we get points for this program to help improve the score, to improve your flood insurance discount. So what this equates to annually in town, I pulled it up just before I left the office, is about $200,500 a year. So over a couple $100,000 is what the town residents are saving per year. That could be a lot higher. We did a quick, dirty flood insurance analysis of the town, and there are a lot of people here that don't have flood insurance policies. So what everybody here is telling you is what your risk is. They're showing you the flood maps. You know what your risk is. So, I mean, that's a personal decision that you need to make. You need to evaluate your risk and decide if you want to purchase flood insurance or not. But you will get a discount if you go with an NFIP policy. So how the CRS works, and you can't read that either. We definitely need a bigger projector. So there are different parts of it. There's the public outreach part, which is the part that I'm going to focus on here. But there's also the response, and of course the town has an emergency response plan, which is tied into the fire departments and the police departments and the county emergency management. So that gets points, the public outreach gets points, Steve enforcing building regulations gets points, all these parks that we have throughout the town, that gets points. And the local mitigation strategy that Steve talked about, that's your floodplain management planning, that gets you points. So there are a lot of things that all together make this comprehensive floodplain management program. And then the more comprehensive your program is, the more money you're going to save on your flood insurance policies. And this is sort of the process that we had to go through. In order to be eligible for the credit for this program, you need to follow these 7 steps exactly as they are. So we did that. We established a PPI committee. Can I have my committee stand up? I know some of you are here. PPI committee. So we have our insurance specialists, our construction guy, and our finance guy over here. We also have a couple of lenders on the committee. We have a couple other construction guys on the committee. Steve, of course, is on the committee. Our newest member is Pat. Lee Holmes, our former vice mayor, was on the committee, and he stepped down when he stepped down from being our vice mayor, and Pat is now on the committee. And he's in charge of public information for us. He'll be the face that you see with the information we give him. So we established the committee. The next thing we did was we took a look at what do you guys need to know? So we went through a bunch of stuff that's already being done by other agencies. We looked at what the town already had and decided, all right, well, what do they need? So we sent you a survey. 2 years ago, we sent you a survey, and we're working on a follow-up survey now, which you should be getting in the next couple of weeks. So you told us what you wanted. You wanted everything. You wanted to know everything. We gave you a list, and you wanted everything. So we came up with messages that applied to everything. And then we came up with projects to relay those messages out to you and provide you with that information. We also have other initiatives. The next step was to look at other initiatives. Things that aren't necessarily projects, but our initiatives in the floodplain management program, like your local mitigation strategy, like your emergency response, like your website, things like that. And then we implemented the plan. It was adopted 2014 or 15? 2015 it got adopted. We started working on it in 14. So raise your hand if you've seen this flood information brochure. Everybody should see it. It goes out in the Beach Beacon, it gets mailed to you, it's here at Town Hall. All right, raise your hand if you've seen this. Okay, so this brochure has all those messages that I just talked about in it and references to the website. So these are just some of the accomplishments I wanted to highlight. The PPI committee has been working very, very hard on coming up with ideas, projects, messages, all these things. The next thing that we did was we took a look at the website and we made sure that there is a slew of flood information on the website. Everything that everybody here tonight has talked about, there's more information on the website. There are links to the county website, to the county maps that Anoki was talking about. There's the storm surge map. You can put your address in. You can click on which evacuation level. Like if you go evacuation level A, you might see like 2 feet of water in front of your house, and then you go all the way to the evacuation D. So if they call for that, that's Category 5 hurricane is coming in. Your house is underwater in the little picture on the app. So I mean, just use the website, play around on it, read the information, play with the maps, and figure out what your true risk is. I mean, we're on a barrier island. You saw the projection for if a big hurricane comes through. We're not on one of those 2 islands in that picture. Another thing that we did was we developed a Facebook page. And we are putting information on there. So if there is an emergency, we will be posting to Facebook what to do, where to go, if we're under an evacuation, etc. So follow the town on Facebook. We also have programming, which I saw it on the TV scroll in the back of the room as I came in. So channel 642 is the town's channel. So we have this information just scrolling through. It's got information about, you know, your garbage pickup and things like that, but it's also got all your flood information on there as well. So we put that whole entire scroll together. And we went through and took a look at what was on those parks bulletin boards. So we posted the brochure out there, and we also posted some information on natural functions, your natural floodplains. Those mangroves are protecting you. The beaches protect us so much. And that renourishment program is so important because without that beach getting renourished, there's nothing between the water and the buildings. So it's critical that we have those beaches renourished. We had a flood information workshop. We didn't offer pizza, so we didn't have quite this crowd. Next time we know we need to order pizza for the flood insurance information workshop, excuse me. So Kim from our PPI committee presented at that one. She provided a slew of the ins and outs of flood insurance. This picture here, this was one of her slides, shows an elevated house, and I can't even read that price. But it's a lot cheaper if you don't have an enclosure, if you're in a B zone. The second you put that enclosure in, even if it's small, that insurance rate goes way up. There's a little bit of a disconnect between building code and flood insurance. So building code wise, you're perfectly fine as long as you have your breakaway walls in your B zone, but your flood insurance rates are gonna be through the roof. So, I mean, just things to think about if you're building a house, or if you got an old pre-firm house on the ground and you're gonna demo and rebuild and you're gonna elevate, just think about the flood insurance aspect if you're gonna get flood insurance when you're building your house, because those enclosures will definitely affect you. And we do have a lot of pre-firm houses. This was another slide that she showed, which just shows basically a pre-firm has a subsidized rate. It's gonna be the same rate regardless of how above or below the flood you are. If you get an elevation certificate done and you are above the flood, it's going to drop your rate tremendously. It's cheaper than that pre-firm rate. And then, of course, if you're below, you want to keep that pre-firm rate. However, FEMA is pulling those subsidies back. You know, NFIP is upside down. They're like $25 billion in debt. So they are retracting those subsidies gradually, 5 to 25% increase annually on those, plus there's a surcharge. So those rates are going to be going up. We've been sending newsletters. Raise your hand if you've gotten a newsletter either electronically or in the mail or in the Beach Beacon. All of you should be getting newsletters. One of these is a letter from the mayor talking about the insurance workshop and saying come on out. The other one is the advertisement for tonight's meeting. Then of course this meeting is part of our PPI program. So we made sure that we got a little flyer together and we put it up on the Facebook page, and it's on the town calendar, on the website, all over the place. And we also have a flood warning and response outreach package that the PPI put together. So these are specialized messages for when there's a storm. So we have these before, during, and after messages that we'll be posting on Facebook, in the email blasts, everywhere we can get it out to you when something is going on so that you're in the know, you know what's going on. And what's next with the program for public information? Well, we're working on the annual update right now. Some new topics that we're going to cover is a no wake. So the message we have right now is turn around, don't drown, but everybody's driving down these flooded roads. They're not listening, and that wake is causing more property damage than the flooded road itself. So we need to somehow educate people about this wake and the property damage that's getting caused. Renourishing the beaches, I just touched on this. If you haven't responded to the request for easement, we're trying to repair our beaches, so please respond to that so that we can get our beach renourished, because without those easements, the county can't get in there and do it. And that is a huge flood protection feature, so make sure that you get those easement things submitted. Homeowners of newly constructed homes, this is going to be something that goes out, I think with the CO we decided, I can't remember off the top of my head. But this is a new project that we're talking about adding. It'll basically be like a little welcome bag with all kinds of town information, including flood information. So that's a project that's on the table to get put together. The flood information needs survey, one of our committee members is working on that right now, so keep your eyes open. That'll be coming out in the next week or two. We're working on a flood insurance assessment. I told you we did kind of like a quick dirty one. We're doing a pretty detailed one now, and we're going to implement that into the PPI document. Understand your flood insurance options and policy, just more outreach to educate people about flood insurance. We're not trying to push you to get flood insurance. I mean, you make that decision what your risk is and if you want to get it, but we just want to make sure that you understand the ins and outs of it. So it's about understanding your flood insurance. The LMS Stakeholder Committee, Steve alluded to this one too, local mitigation strategy. We have a multi-jurisdictional local mitigation strategy, and Steve and Mary, I believe, are members of that committee. We're going to have stakeholders from our PPI committee join as well, so that we can help all of the municipalities increase their floodplain management planning scores in the CRS program. And we have a CRS verification coming up this fall, so we might need some help. If you want to volunteer, we can always put you to work pulling together documentation for the audit. And I'll pass it over to Brian.
And that was a good point, by the way, about giving information to new residents. We appreciate you coming, because I've found every time we do these talks, everybody up here, the reason we're here is because we care, and we might have tons of experience, but the fact that you're here means that you care, and you're also educated enough that you know, okay, I'm going to have to do something when this storm's coming, whether it be a little tropical storm, a big hurricane. So what I've found out is over the years, the packets are good, giving information to new residents are good, but let's face it, we live in a beach community where people are constantly coming in, coming in, coming in. You guys can actually do a really good job to help us out. When you have new neighbors that come in, you get to meet them and you're having drinks and, hey, let's go out to dinner for the first time. Tell them, say, hey, by the way, you might want to go to that annual hurricane meeting. And by the way, you might want to look into the flooding and all the evacuation zone stuff. Don't make it a downer. You know, don't be like, oh my God, this sucks. No, don't do that. Make it more of like an educational thing. I know that sounds silly, but believe it or not, I moved into a neighborhood about 10 years ago, and everybody was moving in, and I was amazed at how many of the people moving into the neighborhood were not from here. And of course, me being the meteorologist, I kind of became the default guy to go to for all that information. I was amazed at how many people just didn't get it. They didn't know, like, what do you mean a hurricane talk? Why would you have that? They forget they've moved to Hurricane Central. Now, sure, we're lucky here on the West Coast that we don't get hit as often, but still, we will eventually get hit with a big one. It's not going to be something like a Hermine that barely passes by. It's not going to be Matthew. It's going to be something bigger. And just by you showing up, we appreciate it. Seriously, thank you for showing up. Because we're not sitting here to try and give you lessons. We're sitting here just to try and tell you what we've been through. Fran, 1996, 3 weeks without power is how long I went. Hugo in 89, luckily I was a couple hours away from it, so I didn't have to go the months without the power. One of the reasons I was hired at Bay News 9 was because I had so much experience from the coastal storms of the Carolinas. It's not like I tried to, it just happened to be where I first got my degree and just happened to get my first 4 or 5 jobs. And they saw that experience, they're like, yeah, we need you. Because they don't want to hire people in a tropical storm market that don't get tropical storms. Makes sense, right? But yet, guess what? Almost everybody that moves here from out of town, they have no tropical experience. None. And we always, I think even Terry and I were talking about this. Everybody assumes because we live in a tropical market, oh, we have tons of experience. No, we don't. We really don't. We might have experience, but most everybody that lives here really doesn't. Unless you've been through Bonnie, Bertha, Floyd, Fran, Hugo, Andrew. I mean, I could just keep going and going and going. And even the ones that I didn't live in, of course the station would say, hey, go cover that. Oh, I got so tired of that. And so now, when I give these talks, I'm passionate about weather. I love my job. But people go, I bet you love when those hurricanes are coming. I hate them. I despise them. I like when we get like little tropical storms. Those are good. I like when we get those early June storms. Those are perfect because those replenish our aquifers. They're really good for the state. But I can't stand big hurricanes. It crushes me because I live through them. So it's not fun and it's not exciting because there's 10 feet of sand now where the road used to be. And good example, Matthew, just last year. We got lucky, it mostly missed the east side of our state. And we also got lucky and it really weakened by the time it made it up to South Carolina. So they kind of got a glancing blow. I have a friend that lives on one of those barrier islands in South Carolina. And even though they just got a glancing blow, it's kind of like they got a caking of concrete sand around their homes. So it took months, not weeks, months for them to fully get back out there and get living again. And that wasn't even that big of a storm. I think everybody would agree up here, that's kind of what we're talking about. So it's not that we're trying to scare you, it's not that we're trying to say the worst case thing is going to come. I hope it never does. It might not. We might get lucky. I mean, we really haven't had the worst case scenario in about, almost coming up on 100 years. I mean, we've had the Elenas, we've had the close calls, we've had the really, really close calls where it kind of smacked us a bit, but we haven't had the big one. And I hope it never does happen. But when it does, that's kind of what we're talking about. Just you being here, you're doing great. Love the go bag. I actually was taking notes. This is good stuff. I've been a meteorologist for 20 years, and I still learn stuff every time I come to these. The drone assessment, that's awesome. That needs to be done. Because when I lived in North Carolina and we got hit so much in the 90s, it was like, the 90s was North Carolina's time. I don't know why. We just kept getting hit and hit and hit. We found that we couldn't even get out on the beach. Your tire would pop immediately. 10 feet, boom, pop tire. You know, you'd put that fix-a-flat stuff in. Yeah, you go 10 more feet, poop, another hole. You just couldn't even make it. Walkie-talkies is a good one. You know, everybody up here has mentioned stuff about try and put yourself in this idea of what do I do after a hurricane. We're not doing that either. We're not doing it to scare you either. We're doing it to try and kind of place you in that mindset. And I'll be honest with you, you can only do so much prep for that. But when you go without power for a month, it's almost like you're a different person afterwards. You kind of go, wow, this was a different way of living. And I found that walkie-talkies were really cool. No cell towers, no need to rely on anything. Now, albeit they might only go for about 5 miles, but it really came in handy for people that had evacuated to Seminole and the people that had evacuated to Largo, and they could talk. And you just needed batteries. Power inverters came in really handy because your car, you could crank it up and then charge a cell phone. You just had to have tanks of gasoline ready to go. So it's good notes, good stuff. I'll talk a little bit about my talk. I know everybody wants to get into have pizza, so I don't want to go too in depth with this. That's the only problem about this. I don't want to bore you to death. I don't mind if we get tropical storms in June because they very rarely are that big. And yeah, they can do damage. And yeah, they can push sand right across your road here. But again, a lot of times they're actually positives. Take this year, for example. We've been a decade without a drought. A decade. I can't believe we've gone a decade without a drought. We are way overdue for a drought. We're finally in a drought. So now guess what we need? We need a tropical storm. And we probably won't get it. That's our luck. We've had a tropical storm, I think, the past 2 years in a row, and now this will probably be the 1 year we don't get it, and we keep our drought going until August. But the reason is because our patterns are perfect for it. The warm waters tend to warm up in the Western Caribbean. The cold fronts coming down stop right about now. We just had one, and guess where it stopped? Cuba to the Bahamas. So what I'm hoping might happen is maybe we can get a little low to spin up off of that and pull some moisture back our way. Even if it's not a tropical storm, you just kind of want to get that moisture back up here. You see that little blob of light blue? All right, so you see the tanned brownish colors over us. That's really, really dry air right now. The spring pattern, this was one of the nicest springs I can remember here in over 13, 14 years of living here. It was a gorgeous spring. Sure, we had a few little spikes of temperatures, but it was gorgeous. Tons of low humidity. I mean, up until like this week, we really haven't had a lot of humidity, and it's finally starting to feel a little like summer. Usually, it feels like summer by late April around here. That blob of moisture right down there south of us, the tan brown color's the dry air. This is today's map. That little light blue area is the moisture down there south of Jamaica. That's usually what will trigger tropical storms. The front stalled, that's where it stops. That's very normal in May. So that front stopped. If we can get that moisture back here by next weekend, we might finally start getting into some afternoon thunderstorms, and if it stays long enough, maybe it can trigger a tropical low or something like that. You don't need a tropical storm, you just need something to pull that moisture back up. Last year, this was the map with the satellite view, so I grabbed one today, and look how close it is. It's actually pretty similar. All right, let me go back. All right, so you see all the blobs down there south of our state today. The only difference was last year the front had kind of stalled through the southern part of our state. So it was a little closer. And that's how we got our first tropical storm last year. It was off that blob right down there southwest of Cuba. That's a professional term, by the way, blob. I tend to use a lot of professional terms on the air. I get laughed at a lot, but I don't care. I laugh at myself. So that's today's. It's different in that this is why our spring has been so gorgeous. These fronts have been stronger this spring. It's been impressive. It really has been. So as I've been saying on the air, a good thing's turned into a bad thing. We had just constant cold fronts this spring. The problem is they didn't come with a lot of rain. They just kept coming with drier. So we kept getting these cooler continental fronts, and it's pushed so far south, the moisture's just non-existent around here. I mean, it was hot today, and we barely even got a little shower in Hardee County. Last year, temperature anomaly. Hard to see, but you see the light blue color up there in the North Atlantic? I'll let you focus for a second because I know it's hard to focus on that. See the little state of Florida right there? Gosh, it's so tiny, but you can barely see us right there on the left-hand side. Everybody see it? Okay, let me go to today. A lot more cool water than last year. Let me go back. See how much warmer? It was pretty much the entire Gulf, the entire Caribbean, the entire Atlantic, except for the North Atlantic. This is this year. Look at the Gulf. Why is the Gulf so cool? We've had tons of cold fronts. The cold fronts don't have to be cold. They just have to kick up winds, and the winds have to come from the north. Boom, you get a cold Gulf. Even the loop current. Is anybody familiar with the loop current? It's really cool. Warm waters come up from the Caribbean, underwater. They stream. It's a water pattern. And they stream and form the Gulf Stream. I know you've heard of the Gulf Stream. That's where it starts. Our water temperature is so cool in the Gulf that the Gulf Stream is even only at about 79 or 80. That's really, really cold by Gulf water standards. In other words, we could barely support a tropical storm if one were to form now. So that's why, in a weird way, I'm kind of like, oh gosh, I don't think this is going to be the year we come out of a drought. This might be one of those years where the drought just keeps going and we hope that we just have a really, really wet, rainy season. Last year, this is a map of heat potential in the water, okay? So we're talking warm water deep down, 50 to 100 feet down. That's what you really want if you want a tropical storm. This was last year. Now look at this year. A lot more limited. So the waters have cooled considerably. Other than the South Central Caribbean, which is always warm, you don't really have a lot of heat potential. This is a multi-decadal oscillation pattern that you see here. Got that? There's going to be a test at the end of this. Yes, I knew you were. Blue. The great thing about me is I use big terms, but then I make it simple. Blue means there are not many storms. Red means lots of storms. This is about a 25 to 30 year oscillation. The longer I'm on this planet, the more I realize we've just touched the tip of the iceberg on how much we're learning about this planet. It's fascinating. So in the past 10 to 15 years, we're learning that there are oscillations all around this globe. And we're learning that they're above us, they're also below us in the ocean. They're in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And when these oscillations occur, the tropical storms numbers will perk up or go down. So what ends up happening is people move to Florida when we don't have many tropical storms, and then we go through a 20-year period of tons of tropical storms and hurricanes, and everybody goes, oh my gosh, it is so bad down here. Well, we just happened to go through about 25 years of not many tropical storms, and then all of a sudden, late 90s, 2000s, it perked up. The 2000s was basically what ruined our insurance industry. We've talked about that. So, the top, 45 to about 1970, tons of tropical storms and hurricanes, which, by the way, for a lot of folks that lived here at that time, they will remember that's when the initial strong building codes that Florida developed started. Because we got so many tropical storms back then in the 40s, 50s, and 60s that people were going, wow, we should build with concrete block, not wood. Thank goodness they were smart, because now, of course, people always want to go cheap. But thank goodness our state has said, no, you're not going to go cheap. You got to force these builders to go with strong code. Because then we went through a time, 70 to 94, where we didn't have as many storms. Everybody moved to Florida. And now we're in a busier time. However, there's a lot of discussion right now of are we coming out of it? Because the past 3 seasons in a row, we've had cooler than normal water temperatures, we've had below average tropical seasons, and we're wondering if we're now coming out of that 25-year period. You don't need to know the acronyms, you don't need to know anything fancy here. All I did was I put pretty little red arrows and blue arrows to indicate what happens is there are oceanic currents of warm water that constantly come up to the cooler North Atlantic. When there is a pattern that flips and oscillates into those busy times of years, you'll get a very weak high pressure in the North Atlantic, and so the Atlantic will tend to warm up. There won't be strong trade winds, you won't get strong wind shear, and you will get more tropical storms and hurricanes coming across the Atlantic. It all goes hand in hand. The drought pattern that we are in goes hand in hand with why the Gulf water temperatures are cool. The Gulf water temperatures are cool, so it's hard to get tropical storms. You see what ends up happening? It's a domino effect. It's fascinating. We had a pattern set up all winter long that was so constant that the entire eastern seaboard now has above average water temperatures, whereas the entire Atlantic has below average water temperatures. And that's what will happen. These weather patterns will set up. And a lot of my friends come to me and they go, the world's changing. Oh my gosh, it's been a mild winter. And I go, no, you tend to forget. 2009, 2010, we had some of the coldest winters we've ever had. Oscillations, they're flipping. And it's fascinating to watch it happen. And when it happens, there's a domino effect then on other things. This is the kind of stuff we're learning. We weren't that smart about weather 40, 50 years ago. We're starting to figure it out and we're going, oh, this makes sense. You do something over here, it affects something over there. So then all of a sudden, when you don't get as much of a current coming up, you get a stronger high pressure, which in turn, you enhance the gradient between the cool North Atlantic and the warm convergence zone. And guess what you get? Stronger trade winds, cooler sea surface temperatures, higher pressures, increased wind shear, and therefore not as many hurricanes and tropical storms. They all go hand in hand. It's really fascinating stuff. El Nino pattern, you know, this is like one of those things that has become almost kind of fun to talk about in the media because everybody wants to say, are we in an El Nino or a La Nina now? And the meteorologists, we just want to put the face to our head and just, you know, our palm and go, oh no, they're talking about El Nino again. El Nino is not to blame for the world's problems, but everybody loves to do that. Listen, El Nino's been going on forever, and so has La Nina. All it simply is everything I just talked about, the flipping of patterns. The warming of the Pacific, the cooling of the Pacific. That's all it is. But when that happens, it affects other things. So when the Pacific warms west of South America, we get more wind shear going from west to east across the Atlantic. Well, think about it. If the winds are blowing that way and the storms are trying to go that way, do you think that's going to be conducive for development of storms? No, it's going to tend to rip them apart, hence you have below average tropical seasons. See what I mean? Again, it goes hand in hand. So the problem is, what we try to do as meteorologists is, and we sit there and we go, I can predict the next 7 days. I wonder if I can predict the next 90 to 120 days. Well, we all know that's impossible down to an exact point. But we're actually getting decent at finding analog years that had very similar conditions. We're getting very good at pinpointing what the conditions are like around the globe. And we're starting to develop patterns. It's not 100%, it's not even close. We're about 60% accurate on this type of thing. So the day-to-day forecasting, we're getting really high up there, 90%. This kind of forecasting, it's way behind. But it's still cool. You look at 1957, we had 8 storms. We had 65, 6 storms, 72, 7 storms, 76, 10 storms, 2002, 12 storms. The ACE that you see on the right-hand side, what that is, it's an accumulated cyclone index, meaning how much energy from storms did we have that year. When you see that number is below 100, it basically means it wasn't that busy of a year with a lot of storms. When it gets up there around 150, 200, it was a busy year. Well, all those years, it wasn't that active. Right now, our conditions in the atmosphere, in the ocean, in the Atlantic are similar to those years. So, it doesn't look like it's going to be a very active season. Does that matter to us? Not really. What Anaki said, what everybody up here said, and it's almost become cheesy to say it, but we say it every year. It only takes one. The reason why we say that is because I love to do this. I love to do research. I love to figure out patterns. We're learning so much. People say, well, why? Why? This doesn't matter. You could put up there, we're going to get one storm. And that's all that matters, right? We do it because maybe 50 to 100 years from now, if we keep doing research, we might be able to figure out, well, what makes it different when they go north or south, and why do they form in the Caribbean versus the Atlantic some years? That's why it's important, okay? So, no, this isn't something that I lead with anymore in my talks because it doesn't really matter. But that's the general forecast of what we're saying we're thinking for this year, which is about 11 storms. You can see the averages on the right. So if we're right, it's going to be about average, maybe a little bit below average. But we've also seen years where it was a very busy year and not a single storm hit the country. We've seen years where it was way below average and we only had 2 or 3 hurricanes, and yet all 3 of them hit the country. So that's why, again, I almost hate to show it, but the funny thing is, every talk I've ever gone to, everybody wants it. I even ask communities sometimes, do you really want me to show this? Yes. Yes. Okay, fine. And then my bosses make me show this too on the air, and I beg them every year. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if we're the only station in the country that never showed this? And we could even do a promo. We will never show the tropical forecast because it doesn't matter. And they go, no. No. We're not going to allow that. I go, all right, well, I tried. I think I'm going to end on that because obviously we're all starving, and I'll just say this. These folks know what they're doing. If you have questions, talk to them. Don't make it formal, just walk up to them. I mean, Terry and I talk all the time about just anything. I love the go bag, by the way. I might get one of those. That's really cool. And I've been through a lot of storms, and I've been through the after effects. And some of these folks have too. And just hearing the stories can be a really big thing that you get out of these talks. Well, what'd you do when you didn't have power for 3 weeks? It's kind of fascinating. You learn to take cold showers. Of course, we didn't have the water for about a week either. And that's the other problem too. In North Carolina, we usually would get the water back up and running fast. I actually worry more about the water than I do the power down here. Power doesn't bother me that much. Water bothers me. Because think about it, if you can't get water, you can't get the basic sustenance of life going again. Now the good news is the electric companies know that. They're going to get that back up and running first. But that worries me that we're at sea level and we got to pump that water constantly. So anyways, if I don't know how we want to do this. I don't know if we want to do questions real quick right now and everybody ask whatever they want. Or that we want to go to dinner and everybody ask us in there. I don't know how you want to do it, but
You guys can ask questions now or ask when we have some pizza. I know the mayor wants to say a couple things.
there you go. Oh, and by the way, I got free goodies over there. I forgot to say that. I'm not taking that back. So I don't care if there's 100 of them left, which it looks like there are. Take them to friends, take them to neighbors. If you have an HOA, take them to the HOA. I'm not taking that stuff back. So it's staying there if you don't take it.
First of all, I'd like to say, let's give a hand to the... I wanted to talk about one thing. Lisa touched on it. The Corps of Engineers, in their wisdom, for the last 20, 30 years, somehow missed having beach easements signed for pumping public sand onto private properties. They sent out the county, and us, the county, and the towns. We're just the spokesman on this. It all comes down from Corps of Engineers. And I'd like for the people that live on the beach, talk to their friends that live on the beach. Our first line of defense is the beach. I know people don't like dunes, and there were a lot of kickback because in the agreement that the Corps sent out for people to sign, actually the county sent it out, but it came down from the Corps. It said in there that they had the right to put dunes and vegetation. Those words have been removed recently. So if you could, the beach renourishment, we need it, definitely need it. So just keep that in mind. If you talk to your friends, tell them that's our first line of defense for one of these big storms. And if it's not signed down the road, if the big storm comes and the beach is taken, it can't be replaced.
When do we receive that paperwork? We haven't.
There's some places that have not, they picked, I think there was 30 that they put out. There's more to come, but right now I think there's 30 out there. But I appreciate you taking a look at it. Other than that, let's go eat pizza and thank you again.